All right, recording over here.
Another random fun fact.
Let's hear it.
Posted that TikTok and reel yesterday.
Yeah.
And already had like 3 people DM me on Instagram actually. And they're like, hey, I need your services. Like, I've been wanting to talk to you for a while about it.
Wow.
And it's funny because
Let's go.
I'm like not even doing marketing anymore, right? Like,
Yeah.
but I was like, wow, imagine if I'd done this like years ago when I was trying to grow my business.
True.
And all of a sudden I have people reaching out like, hey, I've been meaning to get some marketing from you. You
Bro,
know, but it was
I
just
was-
like top of mind, and all they had to do was see it and be like, yeah, I should hit
A
him up.
reminder, yeah.
Bro, I was preaching TikTok to our clients in like 2019.
Yeah.
And like one of our clients, like who has like a short-term rental Airbnb brand,
Yeah.
he was like a total TikTok hater. And then he started making TikToks and like they started blowing up. It started working. And then, yeah, he loved us. So it's crazy
Well,
because
we never got to thank you for that.
I don't think we can thank you for that. So we're gonna keep his name out of this.
We
He
actually
doesn't
never
get
got
the
to
shout
thank
out. We'll squash the beef on the podcast live.
you. Yeah.
But
Nice.
so yeah, what's up? We're chilling here with Luke Heinecke, Truman Mylan. We got Adam Sorensen, and it's your boy Mike Ritchie here. And today, it's like I'm so excited to have a guest here because the last couple episodes have just been the boys chopping it up. But now we get to like talk about you, introduce you. You're someone that like Truman and I both look up to and like have learned so much from. So like doing the podcast with you is like a super awesome opportunity to bring education to our audience about just like your life. Like the last episode we were talking about just like the process. So like the process of your entire life going from seeing you driving a white Corolla or a white
Camry, bro. Come on.
to like where you are now, having sold multiple companies, and
Yeah.
now you're like an accomplished investor by the time you were 30. So that's like huge accomplishment to do something like that within the span of 10 years or so. And like I just want to go back. Maybe let's start this after high school.
Yeah.
Where was your head at after you graduated from high school?
That's a great question. First, I just want to say thanks for having me out here, guys.
Of course.
And I won't stay off topic too long, but I have to say we had like a team meeting today at the company that I recently sold. I still work there, right? And I used 2 of Truman's TikTok takeaways in my meeting. I just want to throw that out there.
Let's go.
I literally used I am now implementing the will this make the boat go faster across my whole company. Money TikTok, by the way. I just had to throw that out there. So thank you for that. And my point is that you guys are also people that I look up to. So I'm super grateful to be on the podcast today and be able to talk with you guys.
Appreciate that.
Yeah. So back to the question. My head after high school was actually in a really crazy place because I got kicked out of my parents' house when I was 18. And I was homeless, living out of my car. And I went and got 2 jobs. One at a like packing company that was like a warehouse, and I worked on call. So they would call me, they would text me or call me at like 11 at night. I had to be there within 1 hour. So that sucked. And then I worked at a sushi bar part-time. And I remember like all I wanted to do is be able to get my own apartment, and rent was like $900 a month. And I had really bad credit, and so it was hard to like even get an apartment. So I went and I applied at this place, and they're like, yeah, if you can show X amount of income, we can rent you this apartment. And so I went out and I was hustling. I worked like 100 hours, like over 100 hours the week before Christmas on my 19th birthday. And I remember getting home on Christmas night at like 10 p.m., just like so exhausted. I just went to bed. I like didn't even care about Christmas. I just want to go to bed. I just want to sleep. And I had hit my goal of making enough money that I could then go get that apartment. And at the time I was just like kind of couch surfing. I stayed with a girl that I was dating at the time. So my head was just in survival mode. And when you're in survival mode, it's so hard to think big picture because you're like, I just want to eat.
Yeah.
I just want to have to like
Pay
not
my
steal
bills.
groceries.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I was legit stealing food to eat, which is like something that I'm not super proud of now.
Yeah.
But like, I just did what I had to do.
Yeah. So after that period, what was your transition into like the world of business? Like how did you go from working at a sushi restaurant to working in the world of entrepreneur or business, because not even necessarily entrepreneurship.
Yeah. Well, it kind of was one small step at a time. It didn't happen overnight. I didn't just like wake up one day and like, I'm quitting my sushi job. I'm quitting this and I am starting a business. You know, it didn't happen like that.
Watch one Gary Vee video and you're ready to go.
I wish I hadn't even heard of Gary. Like, I didn't know, believe it or not, I didn't read books. I didn't listen to podcasts. I really didn't know how to educate myself. And so that slowed my process down a lot. So that'd be like the number one thing I could say people that want to level up their life should do is they should listen to podcasts. They should read. They should start absorbing material, because the sooner you do that, it's going to open your eyes and you're going to become, you know, the more educated you are, the more informed you are, the better decisions you can make, the faster you can grow.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the next step, basically what happened is I was really stoked. I was making like, I want to say like $2,000 a month. I know that sounds so sad.
Oh, wow. It got so much quieter after we turned the heater off.
I forgot that was on.
$2,000 a month. That's not that sad.
I was proud of it at the time.
Yeah.
And it was paying my bills, but I was working so much. I was working more than full time, 2 jobs. And that was like tips and, you know, shift work and overtime and everything else, which if you've ever done that, you know, that's not the way you want to earn $2,000 a month. It's a hard way to earn money. And I ran into my buddy from like high school. Not even my buddy. Well, just like a kid I knew in high school. I hate calling him out like that. Hope he doesn't watch this. You're my buddy now. No, but I ran into him. And he's like, and I was like kind of bragging a little bit. I was feeling pretty good about myself. I was like, yeah, man, I just got my own apartment, making $2,000 a month, dude. He's like, that's cool, man. I'm making $50,000 a year. I just bought the new Camaro, and I was like, let me see this. I don't believe that shit.
Yeah.
Takes me outside. He's got like the 45th edition like Camaro, like he was making $50,000 a year, which at 19 I was like, that's a ton of money.
Oh, right.
I'm like, dude, get me a job. Selling cell phones for like Verizon, like kiosks and stuff.
Okay. Like, is it like a third-party company that sells phones?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they sell like AT&T, Verizon, Sprint. So he gets me a job, and I just hustled. I didn't have any sales experience, but I was just the guy who like my manager would always call in. And so he'd be like, hey, can someone take my shift? I'm like, dude, I'm there. And I would just be there. So I just grinded, right? And then like the upper management noticed. And after like 6 months of working there, they gave me my own store and made me a manager.
Nice.
Yeah.
So then you probably went from commission to salary, or did you still make commission as a manager?
Yeah, it was commission, but based on like how the stores did. And so then it was like another year, and they gave me like 2 more stores. So I had 3 stores, and I was making like 50, 60,000 a year. Mm-hmm. And I had like a little team that I managed, and I was the best salesperson in the whole region.
Let's
like
go.
Consistently.
How old are you roughly at this point?
I'm still like 19, 20 years old probably. Yeah.
So how did you go from there to like starting your first business?
Yeah, so another small step. So again, I'm feeling good about myself.
Yeah, let's go.
This is going to be a theme of my life, I think. And I'm like, so I'm running to my buddy, and I'm like, yeah, man, making $60K a year. He's like, that's cool, dude. I just made that in 1 month, selling alarms, door to door. And I'm like, what, dude? I literally thought it was a scam. I was like, he's literally trying to, like, I thought it was one of those, like, what do they call that? Like, multi-level marketing?
MLM.
Yeah. MLM. And I'm like, that sounds like fake. And he's going to steal my social security number, you know? Like, this is a scam. But I was like, yeah, I'll go in for an interview, you know? And he's like, yeah, it's commission only. But it's like $500 to $1,000 per alarm, depending on all these different metrics. So I go in, I talk to the guy, and he's like, yeah, we're going to be going out this summer, and, you know, you can make $200,000-$300,000 in a summer. Here's the guys that have done it. Here's their actual paychecks. And I'm like, that's wild. So I quit all of my jobs, like everything I was doing, and went out to sell alarms.
This was in Texas, right?
Texas and Louisiana, yeah. And this was like 2013, so I'm like 21.
It's kind of like a testament to like there's levels to things.
Yeah.
Like what I'm hearing from you is like you reach like a new point where you think like this is, I mean, it was like the furthest you've ever been at that point.
Yeah.
And you think that like that's all you have left in the tank, but then you just someone else comes into your life and kind of expands that out into like a whole new paradigm, you know?
Yeah, and I think it's also being like not being afraid to go do something different, and also being open to like change, you know, and sacrifice of going and living. Like I had to move out there for 3 months.
Yeah.
And at the time I had like a girlfriend that I've been dating for a couple years, and she's like, yeah, if you go out there, I'm going to break up with you. And I was like, well, I guess we're breaking up then, because I got to go do this, you know?
Yeah.
And it was like, so there was like sacrifices and changes like that I had to make, like, which in hindsight, like I made the right decision, but at the
Clearly.
yeah. At the time though, it was hard. It was hard at the time.
course.
You know?
Yeah.
Hindsight is 2020.
And so the biggest thing though was not, you know, I made pretty good money out there selling alarms, more than I was making before. And I made it all in one lump sum, you know, because they pay you up front and then they pay you this check at the back end. But that wasn't where the real value was at all. It wasn't about the money. Door to door, the value in door to door was the mentorship that I got from the other guys that I worked with that were there leveling up their life in a real way. Remember, there's this kid, he probably doesn't even know this. I've never told him this. His name's Houston Crandall. And he was like, hey, do you have Audible? I was like, well, no, what's Audible? He's like, oh, it's an audiobook thing. You can listen to any book you want. You just listen to it. You don't have to read. Because I told him I hated reading. I was like, oh, I'm going to check this out. So I download Audible. Sorry for all the, I got like a cold thing going on today. Anyway, so I download Audible, start listening to audiobooks, and instantly like light bulb. I'm like, I can learn anything I want to learn anytime I want to learn it.
Yeah.
And it started like this growth process in me where it was like all of a sudden I felt like I had control over like my own destiny. This sounds crazy, but I was like, I can learn anything, right? Not saying I'm a super genius, but like I can listen to something and I'm like, I can take points away from
You got
it.
super
right?
potential.
Super potential, sure. Everybody has a lot of potential if they start applying themselves. And so that was this big takeaway for me, because now I started listening to podcasts. I started listening to Audible because I didn't like to sit down and just read text.
Right.
It wasn't something I ever wanted to do. I couldn't, like, I don't know if it's ADD or what it is, but it was like hard for me to sit down and just like read a book. But I could listen to Audible and I like would get way into it.
Would you like listen to books like while you worked out or like did other things, or would you like sit there, listen, and like actively take notes, or like probably a combo?
A combo. I mean, to start with, I would just throw it on while I was doing something. Like while I was walking to like, you know, door to door, I'd throw my headphones in and then just click them off before I hit a door, or on my drive out to my area, or in the morning before I went out and knocked, or at night. I just got addicted to listening to audiobooks. And then the second takeaway, though, from that door-to-door job was learning to face rejection and then realizing that it didn't actually hurt me. Because, like, you have this fear, right, of, like, whether it's starting a business or selling something
or like dating.
Yeah, talking to a girl, even making new friends. Mm-hmm. Everyone's afraid of rejection. If you say you're not, like...
That's like one of the most primal things. It's like rejection, you know?
Yeah, you want to fit in. That's born into us. And door to door, you knock on people's door, and sometimes people are like, dude, go away from my house. You suck. I hate you. And you're like, you have to walk away, right?
Yeah.
But then you'll knock on the next door, and that guy's like, dude, I actually need an alarm system. Come on in. I'm going to buy one. Yeah, and then you have everything in between, right? People who need a little more convincing, a little less convincing. But ultimately, you learn to face rejection and keep going. Mm-hmm. And the guys who do best at it are the ones who can take rejection all day, but keep going. And then also, you can kind of notate, what am I doing right? How can I improve my pitch?
Like
Adapt. So I started reading sales books. That was the first type of book that I started listening to. I shouldn't say read, listening to on Audible. I started listening to Grant Cardone and a bunch of these other guys, like Fanatical Prospecting. I can't remember his.
Jed Blau.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah.
And all these other sales books. And I started digesting sales material like crazy. And I noticed my sales numbers going up. And I was like, oh, this is actually working. And I had been into lifting weights since I was 13. And I saw real progress with weights. So it was easy for me to keep doing it because I was like gaining muscle and I looked better. But then I started seeing progress in my life when I would read. and it felt like a mental workout that was producing gains for me.
I shared this quote on, I think, 2 podcasts ago of Arnold Schwarzenegger, who, because I got into lifting when I was like 18 or whatever, and he was like one of my, still is a big, he's like the pinnacle of bodybuilding or just in that community.
Sure.
And something that he said is that, like, because he did bodybuilding, acting, went into politics, he said, everything is just reps and sets. Like, and like that, when he said that, because I had that history of working out, like how you did, like it clicked that, that is like the same thing. If I want to go do skateboarding or scootering or whatever I want to do, like it's the way I'm going to get better is the same way that I get bigger in the gym, is just by more sets and more reps and just putting in the work. There's no like secret, it's like, in fitness, you can do these little hacks and whatever. You can do diets or whatever you need to do, or supplements. But like the core, the 80-20, is getting your ass in the gym and putting in the work, and doing more sets and more reps. And like when you said that, I was like, that makes total sense, Yeah. But I just.
So did you do multiple years of alarm sales?
I did 2 like seasons. Yeah, so you do like 3-4 months at a time. And I did 2 of those.
What were your results like?
Like actual revenue or?
Like how big was your check after the first one, and then after the second? Like, did you start to get into these sales book wave in between the 2 sessions or during the first one? And did you see the most growth in the first session, or did you see the growth between the first and the second, where it's like you came back and you hit the ground running, or was it not really like that? Because I didn't do summer sales.
It was definitely the second time around. I went out in I think 3 weeks, and I sold like 40 accounts or something. Like it was like much quicker.
Yeah.
So it was like a 6-figure, check for the first time in my life. And, I actually switched like companies, and then I went back to the other company. So I got like checks from both companies.
Oh, nice.
And benefited from that. So again, though, it was not the money made on those jobs. It was the takeaways from the jobs. Yeah. And so I actually came back for my second season, and a bunch of the guys from door to door, they just do nothing in the off season, and they just like spend their money. Yeah. And that's how they get like hooked into that, go out every summer and sell. Yeah. And it's
like a feast and famine on like a yearly schedule.
Yeah.
It's like we have some of that in like a service business when you're starting out in a monthly, just how, clients or whatever, but it seems like that's on a yearly thing where they get like a huge amount in the summer and then they spend it and
survive for a few months until you come back.
But going back to like when I was a kid, I used to actually take this little red wagon around to my neighbors' houses. My dad was an entrepreneur. He owned a business. And so I was always thinking of entrepreneurial ideas because I wanted to be like my dad. And I would get whatever, fill it up with like different products, that I could get for like $1 and have my mom help me. And I'd go sell them for like $5 to my neighbors. And I would always tell everybody, like when I was like a little kid, I'd be like, I'm going to be a millionaire one day. And, I'm like a little kid. So people are like, yeah, sure you're a buddy.
Luke.
Yeah. So what do you really want to do when you grow up? Because that's not going to happen.
Right.
And so what was interesting is after I'd kind of overcome, being kicked out and like got back on my feet, which I feel like I really got back on my feet after alarm sales. That's when I started realizing, and I started reading, listening. I started getting, I started feeling like I can do anything, or like whatever I put my mind to, I guess whatever I'm willing to invest myself into, I can accomplish. So
you had another mindset shift post sales.
Yeah. And I went back to that. Yeah, I am going to be a millionaire, and I think I'm going to do it by starting a business. But in the meantime, I got a job selling cars, and I remember I worked there for like a month, and I sold like 22 cars. I was like the top sales dude at the car lot. And then I walked in the first week in the next month, and I was like, hey guys, I'm going to quit. I'm starting my own business. And everybody...
It's a car dealership right across the street.
That would have been good.
That's the most savage move.
No, but they were just like, yeah, okay, well, we'll see in a few weeks. Yeah. You'll be back, And they are like offering me more money to stay, and trying to like, and mostly they just thought I was like an idiot, Like, they didn't come out and say, like, you're an idiot, but, like, people don't believe in you when you say you're going to start your own business and you're 22 years old. Most people are like, okay, guy. Yeah. Good luck, you know.
For sure.
And even my buddy that I was working with was like, are you really, like, you're starting a business? And then, like, I actually went back out for like 3 weeks and sold alarms after I started my business. And at the time, that business was just designing websites, right? Just like I would door to door, small businesses, auto garages, and I would sell them a website. But instead of charging them like $10,000 for a website, I'd give them a payment plan where they could pay like $99 or $300 a month for like 5 years. But I designed the website today, and then they just paid me off over time, so that small businesses could have nicer websites. That was the initial business, right? And so long story short, I went out like that first week that I quit, and I made a legal contract, and I was teaching myself WordPress, and I didn't even really know 100% what I was doing. Sorry to those first few clients.
And you were designing the websites also?
100%. I'll do it all myself. So like knocking doors, doing the contracts, building the websites, and I started making money right away. And I think it was like 3 months in, I was already making $2,000 a month, which was like my first milestone goal, because that was like what I needed to just like pay my car payment and my rent and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. So was that like linear design, like the design portion of linear? Like, because I know your website's linear design, but now it's kind of more just known as linear.
Yeah.
Are we talking about the same business?
It was initially, it was like Linear Magnitude Inc., which is a really terrible name.
Oh, where did that come from initially?
It was like, I don't know, I was trying to think of like the most complex words I could think of.
Okay, yeah.
Like, which by the way is like,
guys, it worked.
At least you're honest, yeah.
Not the way to brand yourself, by the way.
Right.
Bad branding advice. So, but I just liked those two words. Like, those go together.
Yeah.
But I think it was like linear because it's a straight, and then magnitude because it's like a change, a shift. And I was like, oh, that's cool. It's like a shift upward. No one ever caught. I don't.
Did you get these, like, did you connect these dots after you had already started, like, came up with your name? Because that was something that I noticed about our company, Temple Mill, is it developed meaning after I started it over time. Even, like, as I would see other people's perspectives, like, talking to Adam, and he was like, oh, it's like a mill is something that produces things over and over again, like a temple, like something on, like, that level of quality. And that's totally what Temple Mill is all about, is like, we want to be able to repeatedly do projects and then also be at the top tier quality that we can, doing the best that we can. But like, that wasn't the initial, when we started it, that's not what we were thinking,
I mean, I don't think it's developed much meaning to this day. It was more of just like, I just like picked a name and I just ran with it. I figured it didn't matter that much.
It's so interesting.
It is a quick step.
Because now that you're in like marketing, when I first heard linear, I was like, that makes sense, because it's like linear, like you want to be growing at a linear pace, like with your marketing.
Yeah.
And when I dropped the magnitude off and just made it linear, way better.
Yeah.
It's so funny because we did the exact same move with Temple Mill Productions, and then we were like, this is just Temple Mill.
Yeah.
Like, this isn't Temple Mill Productions. We dropped Productions.
You don't want like 14 syllables in your brand,
Yeah. Yeah, and our emails were like,
Mike
at Temple Mill Productions.
I remember that, and I hated writing you guys an email because I had to like type it out.
Yeah.
It was so
Okay, real quick for the people like watching that have no idea who you are. What is Linear, and like what do you do?
Yeah, so Linear is a PPC and CRO agency. So I'll break that down a little bit. It's pay-per-click and conversion rate optimization. So that's Google ads, Facebook ads, Twitter ads, TikTok ads, any kind of ad platform that's digital. And then it's also designing the landing pages and the ad, like the copy and the creative that go along with those. So if you've ever seen an ad for like shoes on Instagram and clicked on it and bought yourself shoes, that's the kind of stuff we're doing. We're optimizing the ad, the copy, the images, and then when you click on the ad and it takes you to the page, we're optimizing the checkout. We're making it so it's, we want to reduce friction and make it as easy as possible for you to get those shoes. We want to add urgency. So maybe there's a sale, there's a countdown timer. Those are all things that we're putting together. And so we started out just doing that. And we got acquired earlier this year by a software as a service company that has an artificial intelligence platform that helps us manage those ad platforms. And it really just magnifies us as humans to do what we do at an even better scale. So that company's out of San Francisco and venture funded.
Awesome.
So did you just like add a service at a time over time? Or did you like explore different marketing services and then land on PPC CRO?
Oh, I did a terrible job at this. I started out with websites and then I decided, well, why don't we just do everything? You know? The surefire way to...
Oh my God. That's exactly what we did also.
So I was like, okay, we're going to do SEO, web design, email marketing, pay-per-click, and, like also clean people's shoes. Like,
Right. Yeah.
Right?
Whatever.
You need an oil change?
Yeah.
Cool.
If you got money, we'll do it.
We'll do it.
Yeah.
For sure.
Oh, logo design? Branding? That's us.
Yeah.
It was terrible. I basically failed. So I had a whole staff of people working with me. And some of them became close friends or were family or close friends before. And I had to lay everybody off, down to the last one or two people I think that I could keep. And it was one of the lowest times ever. It sucked. And I felt like an idiot. And I was like, damn, why didn't I just keep my day job like most other people? Mm-hmm. And I had family and friends telling me I should go back and get a day job. And I was in debt. And I thought I'd made, it felt like I'd made a mistake. But there was this thing inside me that was I'm not going to quit. Yeah. I'm not going to give up. And I think that came from past failures that I was maybe ashamed of, or I had where I felt like I'd quit or I didn't work hard enough. Mm. And I was maybe back then I quit and that's okay, but that's not who I am now. I'm not going to quit. I'm not going to give up.
Dude, that's so interesting because when you see someone like yourself now who's clearly not a quitter, you think this person's just like that. Same with David Goggins. People will think, oh, David Goggins, he's just like that. But what I love is that he talks about how he was a fat fucking loser who couldn't run more than half a mile. Yeah. And he had to change his mind and change his life to turn into that person.
So this brings me to my first question that's related to this.
Yeah.
That's because you told us before that you went through these periods of failure with Linear specifically, where it was almost 3 times these periods. So my question is, were there any moments where you realized that things weren't working, and what did you change in yourself to get them to start working?
That's a great question. So the first time around, it almost became this is going to sound weird, but it became a social thing to go to work. I had hired friends, or I had just hired people that I liked. And we would just we did work, but we also had way too much fun.
Right.
Which that's weird, right? Because you want to have fun at work. I think that's a good thing. But we were we were hanging out after work. We were just a bunch of homies and we had a great time and we all hung out. And people would work really late though. Because it was people would, it was we were all just friends. And so it was weird because it's what is that? It's a double-edged sword, because we had people that were willing to grind because of the emotional attachment to the team.
Camaraderie of everything.
And there was this really cool belief in the company in the early days where it was a bunch of 20-something-year-old kids essentially that were we're going to make Linear work. And that was really cool.
That's fucking dope.
It was really awesome. There's a ton of spirit, and we weren't paying very much at all.
Right.
We were paying such little money that only people believed in the future, which is why they were there, because they were making $2,000 a month or less. Mm-hmm. It was not a good paying job. But yeah, so I realized that it was a lot of fun, but it probably wasn't going to work long term unless I actually learned how to build a company. So I went back to what I did with alarms, and I started reading books about business. So Good to Great. What's the one? Scaling Up.
Scaling Up by
Vern Harnish. Built to Sell. Don't know who that is either, but a bunch of other books. I just started I was just digesting material like crazy. Profit First, everything from accounting to marketing to every book I could find on business. And I realized that I'd screwed up a ton, not only from the way I hired, but the way I managed to everything I was doing was wrong. And so I went back, I realized I needed processes and I couldn't just keep, I needed to be running the business. I had all these major light bulbs. And so I started over and I started kind of doing everything right again, or at least better than I was doing it before, and started growing the business back up. But the problem was we still kept the same service offerings with all these services. And I still had a few people there from the old team because I didn't have the heart to just get rid of them. Sometimes you have to be cold a little bit. If someone's not performing, that's hard to do if you have a personal relationship with them. And long story short, we basically did the same thing again, where we got in. I had another team that I had built up, some of the original people there still, but mostly new people. And we had way better systems and processes. We had too many, and it was a scattered mess. And we were making money, but it was never enough to cover expenses. And I was in a ton of debt again, and I had to lay everybody off again. And this was time to start over again.
How many team members do you have the second time around?
I think we were maybe up to 7 or 8.
Wow, that is hard.
So what did that look like after you let everyone go? You would just personally go into the office every day? And
did you even have an office still, or did you have points where there was no office?
I still had the office, and I had one employee left, right? So it was me and one other person, and then I hired another, and then I let that actually original person go. And it was somebody who'd been a day one guy who I really liked as a person, but who just actually didn't perform in the role and never had. And I finally was you know what? I'm hiring people I don't know. I'm interviewing and I'm doing this right. And I've got to let this guy go. And I fired him. And of course he hates me now. And it hurt my soul to this day because it was a friend and probably never be my friend again. And I started over with this one employee, and we would just go into the office every day, and we would work sometimes 6 days a week. And we started from scratch, and we got rid of every service except for 2, PPC and CRO. And we built a business model. And this employee number 1, which I think is a really important skill to have in your first employee, she knew how to build processes, and she came from a big process background. And so she started putting together all these tools from her previous company, and she brought a lot to the table insight wise, that helped us build those processes so that we could scale the company and not just do it blindly. Yeah. So this is round 3 of basically starting from, we had 8, at this point we're down to $8,000 in revenue monthly, just enough to pay rent and her salary and my bills, with $180,000 in debt.
oh, wow.
From banks or from private loaners?
Some from private, most from banks.
Was it difficult to ask for private money, or did you have people that you knew that it wouldn't affect them that were willing to support you?
It wasn't difficult because I knew I wasn't going to quit. So when I asked them for money, I knew I'd pay them back.
You knew that your intention wasn't to just scam them of this money and to run away.
No. And I think if my intention had been that, they would have never given me the money.
Yeah.
They were pretty thorough, and I did pay everyone who I owed money back, which is a great feeling.
Did any of them try to invest in Linear and get equity, or were they just loaning you money that you were going to pay back on an interest rate?
Both.
Oh, okay. Do you regret the investing and wish you would have just... I'm I didn't even know what was saying.
Should I wait?
The longest.
This is a very long.
What are you doing? Oh, okay.
Well, we're back.
Back to the program.
Do you ever feel like you ever took on investment too early?
Oh, for sure. And I kind of, I actually ended up, so what happened is when we were out of money that third time, everyone had given up faith in me. And they were all kind of like, man,
Like
I might...
thinking they were cutting their losses, not going to get the money back.
Yeah, and so I said, well, how about I buy you guys out? And we had taxes that we owed. So we like owed taxes and didn't have money, and so they were going to have to pay part of the taxes. It was a really bad situation. It was poor management on my part. Like, I just still didn't know what I was doing. Which
Or just like poor money management, or just management overall?
Everything. Yeah, I just didn't do a good job. I didn't know, like I was missing a lot of the pieces needed to do everything right? Which I'm like, I think that's pretty normal. There's like running a business there's a lot of pieces to that.
Yeah, and it's like near impossible to like get everything in front before you start. Like it's like, I mean, if you could like mentor someone today, I feel like you could help them do everything
Absolutely.
right. But like if you start off and you're just starting your business, like you're gonna make huge mistakes, like pretty much regardless of, I don't know. It's just
well,
like
even if you have a mentor to guide you through the mistakes, like for me, it's like you and me, I feel like we've been told what we need to do from multiple different mentors, but being told isn't enough. You have to like experience it to understand fully.
Yeah.
It's like it may work for a short period of time, but then if you don't fully, like, because that's the thing about business is there's so many balls to drop. If you're trying to juggle all these balls, you're for sure dropping some of them. Like if you don't have a team, as much as you want to like lie to yourself.
Yeah, so that was kind of interesting though, because it gave me, like, I had the chance to pay them out, and I just said, hey, I'm going to pay you guys out. I'll take care of the taxes. And I bought them both out, and they were like just grateful to be getting their money back. They weren't getting any more than I think what they gave me initially. It was just like,
but you paid them back.
But I paid them back.
Nice.
And then I was like, I'm not going to fail. Like, it was just this thing. I want to win, but more than anything, I don't want to lose.
Yeah.
Like I want to win, but losing is what I won't do. Like I won't accept failure. Like it's like the worst feeling in the world to fail, and I wasn't going to do that. And so then I restarted the engines, and I actually did things right the third time around. I built processes. I hired good people. I applied roles, and I delegated. That was the big thing. I delegated, and I trusted people to do their jobs, and a lot of them ended up doing their jobs better than I would have done it. I adopted a new management strategy. I actually paid attention to the finances, and I paid off all of the debt. The company was debt-free by the time we sold it, well before we sold it.
So were you doing your own services that you provide for other companies on your own company to get new clients? Or were you doing a different strategy?
That's a great question too. Yeah, we actually did a totally different strategy. All of our business, and thanks for bringing that up, Mike, because that's actually the number one way we did end up growing. So when I failed that third time around, I was like, okay, I need more than just books. I need to find someone who's actually doing this and doing it successfully.
Yeah.
And there was this guy in California who owned an agency that was doing like $500,000 a month at the time, which to me, I was like, that's insane.
Yeah.
Still is. It still is.
Another one of those like your mind expanding type
Exactly. That is exactly what it is. It's another run into the guy at the grocery store that's got I am making 60,
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, and I was aiming for like 50K a month, and he's like, yeah, I'm making 500K.
He's like, I made 50K today.
For real though, right?
Jeez, yeah.
And so I had been following their blog, and they had all these blog articles. It was like 5,000 to 10,000 word blogs that you could read online. And I had recently read a book by Joe Paluzzi called Content Inc.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was already on the content mindset. Like, you need content, right? And so then when I found their blog, I was like, that's what he's doing. He's got content. That's how he's growing this business. And then he actually published blogs about how he was growing his business. And so he had this Halloween meetup that he posted on Meetup. And it was just for people there in the Orange County area. But I just bought a ticket and flew out there, showed up to the meetup with my one employee.
Bro, that's always a good move. Like, with Truman and I a couple times have, like, taken risks and, like, spent some of our own money to go see someone that we admire, like, have a meetup. But it's always worth it.
Yeah.
And I was so afraid because I had emailed him and I had reached out to him and been like, hey, I'd ask for some advice, and he actually called me up and offered me a job to just come work for his company. And I was like, oh no, man, I want to do my own thing. But I was worried, like, if I flew out there, I was going to get the cold shoulder, or it was going to be weird. But what was cool is he like sent an email out to everyone. Was like, hey, these people flew all the way from Salt Lake to come see us. And everyone on the team like welcomed us. And I had like this, I mean, this was a major mindset shift for me as well, because I flew out there and I got there and I realized their entire team I had pictured as like these robots, right? Because I was like, how can they be doing $500K a month and have 30 employees? And they must be like the smartest, most insane people ever. And I got there and met them, and they were just like normal people.
Yeah.
But they had processes to follow, and they knew what to do, and they had management, they had oversight, and they had a lot of fun at work too. Like they were doing things to make work fun. So the first thing was I was like, oh, I can hire people and they can do a good job, and I don't have to do all this myself or micromanage, or like, I can actually delegate. And then I sat there and I interviewed this guy. He went in his office with me, and I asked him, I had a list of questions I had written out. I had spent like 2 hours in my hotel room before we showed up at their office. I had written all these questions, and I showed up and I spent like 3 hours, and he just sat there and answered like 3 hours with my questions, which
he answered all of your questions.
Every single question I had. He told me everything he was doing to grow his business, like everything we needed to do. Like I even took pictures of like, things there that I thought would like maybe be like refresh my mind, And I took like pages and pages and pages of notes. And this guy just gave me 3 hours of his time for free. This I would assume millionaire, at least at the time, just gave me 3 hours just because I showed up from Salt Lake and took an interest in his business. And then I went back to Salt Lake and I immediately started writing blogs.
Because his biggest takeaway was to create more content in terms of what you were lacking at that point?
Well, that's how he grew his whole business, was with content. Yeah,
that's like the topic of his whole book.
No, that's not the same guy, though.
Yeah, different guy.
Oh, okay.
Different guy. Wasn't Joe Paluzzi. It was another guy that owned an agency.
Gotcha.
But I was on the content train because of that book, and that's how I found this guy.
And he was also on the content wave.
Yeah. And I started, and he told me, one of the things he told me, he's like, well, think about it. How do people even know what you do if you don't have any content out?
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, boing.
Yeah.
And so then I realized, like,
you have to let people know that you're out there. They're not just going to be able to read your mind and come to you. Like, very, very rarely that happens, but you can't rely on it.
And you also have to be able to, like, show people, like, in today's environment with content and the internet and stuff, you have to be able to show people first, I feel like, what you can do. Like, what services you offer, one, but, like, how does it actually impact your business? Like, people have to be able to, like, know that you know what you're talking about.
Right.
You can't just be like, oh, he does marketing. Like, oh, he actually understands marketing. I can see it from his blogs. I can, like, the proof is in the pudding, like that type of thing.
Big trust indicator. And I think that was the thing that, another thing that stood out is he told me, he's like, yeah, most of the leads we get, they're signing up in like 14 days or like 7 days. And we were just like our sales process was months sometimes. And he was like, yeah, well, it's pretty easy because they usually call up and the conversation goes something like, hey, I've read like 4 or 5 of your blogs and I really want to work with you guys. What do I need to do? Like, that was not the conversations we were having. I was cold calling people. I was like, I was like running, like I was running in circles trying to get clients, and I would have good months and we'd sell a bunch of stuff. And then I'd have 2-3 months where we sold nothing. And I was like, how am I going to pay my bills? This sucks. And so with content, he's like, yeah, we make a piece today and it doesn't even rank for like 6 months. But when it starts ranking, we'll get deals from it for years. Dude, and it was like consistent.
I think it's like the difference between like going out and trying to like get like clients versus like you're building up your like garden, like so to speak, and people are like coming to you and they're like being attracted, or it's like a beehive or something. People are like being attracted to you, and you don't have to like go out and force people. Like, you're just putting your stuff out there and they're deciding if they want to work with you or not.
Yeah.
I see that with YouTube so much. Like, the other day I sent you guys a Gary Vee video that I just watched, and it was just like, it's just like Gary's like preaching about creating content. And it like, I sent that video to you guys literally yesterday, but that video came out in May.
Yeah.
And I'm just now getting to it. And I'm even, I follow him. I watch his other videos. I sent you a different one like 2 weeks ago. And even for me as a fan, I didn't see that video until 4-5 months later.
Yeah.
Which is like just so crazy. Like, you don't like see the results of building it until you start to see them.
They're like assets or like evergreen. Like they're always going to be there. Like you have, how many blogs do you think you have on that one?
Hundreds.
Yeah, they're just like sitting there attracting views and every month.
Blogs that I wrote in 2018, gave us, hundreds of thousands of dollars in revenue this year.
So here's a question I have for you. How precious were you about writing your content? And like, were you like really putting like, this is the blog article that's going to give this man the most amount of value? Or was it like, let me just rip these, experiment? Even like today, like I'm sure you're not writing the articles personally, but they're still, Linear is dropping blog articles, like transitioning. I don't know, I'm just curious about that whole process,
So there's 2 great points there. And this is actually another kind of knowledge drop that I got in that meeting in California with that other agency owner. I was like, hey, how do you know what your job is and how do you know when to delegate something? And he's like, well, I just, in the early days of a company, right? He's like, let's say you're doing, design work. Then you build out the process for design work. You hire a designer and then you move on. And so it's like you just keep doing something, you build a process, and you move on in the early days, and you hand it off to someone else.
So you delegated pretty quickly then?
I delegated content like within, I started, me and my other employee I had at the time, the 2 of us, all we did was write content. And I was like, hey.
You had a lot of material already.
We just started writing. So I used I think his name's Brian Dean. I feel bad if I'm getting his name wrong. But he wrote this article it was called the skyscraper technique. And it basically is the concept of you find another piece of content online. So let's say that the content is about video production. And it's like, you're going to go Google video production. You're going to find the top like 4 or 5 articles. And then you're going to find the one that's the longest and the best. And you're going to make it 10 times better. So if it has 1 picture, your article is going to have 10. If it has 1 video, your article is going to have a video that's like way longer and more in depth. If it has 500 words, yours is going to have 5,000. And he called it the skyscraper technique. Basically, here's like this little, building that your competitors have, and you're just going to build this skyscraper next to it. And I felt like that was the way that, because I didn't have money for SEO. I didn't have money to like buy a bunch of backlinks or go. I didn't really have the time to write content and build backlinks. So I was like, I'm just going to create the best content and Google's going to rank for that. But what it did that was even more cool than that is it got us a lot of opportunities where people would read the content and then reach out and be like, hey, do you want a guest blog? Do you want to post a blog on our blog? And we just started getting links naturally because people would find the content and then they were other blog writers would link back to our content because it was good enough and it was longer and better than the others. And then I started reaching out to other like industry leaders and asking them to write guest blogs for our blog.
Oh, would you pay them?
No. A lot of times they do it for free because they could link back to their website if they wrote a blog for us.
They'll be like, hey, I was on Linear's blog, and it gives them credibility.
Eventually, yeah. Now it does. We didn't have credibility then. So it was more about like, hey, you own a software company that does, it helps people design landing pages. Do you want to write a blog about landing page design for us? And then you can link back to your software. And they're like, done.
So like with video production as an example, you would take someone who could be like a creator and ask them to do a guest blog, like, because they have a similar audience to you, and ask them to do a guest blog about how they plan videos. And then if I'm a video production company, someone who's trying to learn more about video production is going to get value from that and then hopefully check out my company.
Yeah. And it's just beneficial for both, right? Because so that's actually a real example. That landing page company that wrote that article for us, that article today, if you Google post-click landing pages, that's like it ranks number 1 still. And I didn't even write that article. This other owner of this landing page software company wrote it. But we get business from that article. So And
Would
that
you do
was-
like keyword research when finding ideas for art, or would your team have a process on like researching specific keywords and writing them along those lines?
We do now, but transparently in the early days, I just looked at what other competitors were ranking for, and I just was like, hey, if they're doing that, it must be working for them. And I would just write better articles than them. And so do I think it's a good idea to have a content strategy and pick keywords? Absolutely, 100%. But in the early days, the most important thing you can do is just like get started. Like
Yeah, you
just
gotta
do something. Because
walk
otherwise you're
before
going to,
you run.
yeah, and you just procrastinate. You don't do anything, right?
Yeah.
So back to your question though, originally, I feel like I got a little bit off. I don't
About
know
being
if
precious about the content?
Yeah. So every waking moment, like I remember the Super Bowl that year in like 2018, I was sitting there just writing an article with the Super Bowl like on the screen in front of me. I mean, like I was just writing content. I woke up in the morning, like I had a goal to write like 700 words a day. And I would just try to hit my word count goal every day.
And you would just be in writer mode. Focus,
Yeah.
like your primary focus was, okay, I need to create a bunch of articles. Let
Yeah.
me just every day set this goal of 700 words or whatever, and then you just tackled it.
Yeah. And, a lot of it was like taking an article that already existed, reading it, and then going and doing like finding other courses or things that like were about the same subject, but that they hadn't talked about in that article, and watching videos. So I would split my time between learning and writing. So I was learning, and then I would actually prove points that they had that were wrong, or I would take like a different take. If they had said this is good, I would say this is bad. So I would try to make it different, try to make the content stand out.
So I'm being selfish with this conversation
Yeah,
because
go ahead.
the entrepreneur in me is like, I love talking about this stuff, but I know a lot of our audience doesn't really care about business. So I kind of want to kind of swerve back, but I'm curious of like, currently, how big is your team?
Pretty close to 20 people now, in like the linear branch of the company, but in the total company that acquired us, there's over 400 people.
Man, that is a massive, like, systemized operation. It has to be.
Yeah,
like,
it
to
is
have
now.
that many people and all that. Like, since they've like bought your company, have they put in place a bunch of their systems, or have they been like, the reason why we bought your company because you already did a great job at building it the way that we're looking for a company to be built. That's why they just bought yours instead of building their own.
Both. I mean, they bought us because, they have a due diligence period. And in due diligence, they look through everything. And they're like, and they'll ask you questions like, so what, can you walk me through the process from a time a client signs up to the time that you're working for them to the time that they cancel? And you better have a checklist for everything. And so, that's one of the reasons that we got acquired, is we had a checklist for everything. Here's our onboarding checklist. This is everything we do when a client signs on. Great. Okay. Well, what do you do once they're onboarded? Oh yeah, here's our weekly, monthly, daily. Okay. What if they cancel? Oh, here's our offboarding checklist. How do you train people? Like everything was built out. Right. Yeah. And so I felt like when, you're getting interviewed by a company that's looking to make multiple acquisitions, they're going to try to pick the best companies that are most prepared.
Yeah.
So having processes and how well we were set up helped us. But I also think that they've come in and they've improved several things just by bringing, the big switch was like going from like a profit mindset of like, hey, we want to have $1 million in profit, to going to like a growth mindset of we don't really care how much profit we have. We just want to add, $2-3 million in revenue. Exactly. Yeah. Top line revenue.
Interesting, because this topic of the acquisition process, I'm super interested in, and I'm curious of like how long it was like from the time you guys started talking to once you got like a check or money in your account.
Man, that's a good question. I'd have to break down the timeline, but I want to say it was like 6 months of due diligence and like negotiating, and it wasn't quick. And so, I mean, one of the things I just was like, when we were going through the process, I never like thought like, okay, I'm going to sell the company. I just kept going in every day. I'm like, I'm going to make this company bigger, because my goal was to be able to be like, I thought about it and it's not enough money. I'm going to need more money if you still want to buy it. So like, I think that's important. Like you don't want to get in the mindset of like, oh, I'm selling the company, so I'm going to coast for the next like 3 months while we go through due diligence. Cause then it's like, if you tank your company, they can back out at any time.
Yeah.
So, we kept growing. We had we had our biggest month, like the month before we closed. So.
And that's best case scenario, I feel like.
Here, real quick. So, maybe you guys covered this when I was upstairs real quick, but, so in that process of like, now that you're acquired in that 6 month time period, where you are growing so much, and there's like, when did you kind of like realize that they were trying to buy your company, and like how much negotiation was that? And are you growing in that time where you're using that to like sell your company for more? And then second question is, now that you're kind of...
Let's do the first one real quick.
Yeah, answer that first one first. You're good.
So first one, they were super direct. So they literally just reached out, again, because of our blog was one of the ways that they found us in the first place, which is pretty cool if you think about it. What we did to grow our company also helped lead to an exit. So content. Takeaway of this podcast today.
Yeah.
Have content.
Yeah.
But basically, they were just like, hey, we want to buy a company like yours, and we want to start the due diligence process. Is that something you'd be interested in? And I was like, yeah, sure. And they're like, oh, so you're not like super, eager? And I said, no, not really. Because at the time I was like, I was in the mindset of I was going to keep growing, just keep making, because I was making a lot of money already. Mm-hmm. Like I already had, like when we went to Vegas in February and picked up my car, like I still owned my business. I hadn't sold it.
Yeah.
Like that was all just my money I was making for the business. So I think that's another takeaway from like selling a business. You don't want to be in a position where you need to sell it.
Yeah.
You want to be in a position where like they're chasing you. Like,
Yeah.
Because did you have like a bidding war between multiple potential buyers, or was it just that one company?
It was just the one company, but I did ask for more than they offered. I asked for quite a bit more, like 10% more than the initial offer, and got it. So I wish I'd asked for like 20 or 30%.
Because you had more leverage than you realized.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so second question. Now that you are acquired, you got paid, and now you're working like for them in a sense.
Yeah.
Is this like a temporary or like a contracted out time where you are kind of teaching them the ways, like you were saying, or is it like, are you now an employee, or is this like, how does that work exactly? Most people probably don't know anything about that. So.
Yeah. So it's really, that's all part of the negotiation process. So, you could say, hey, I'm trying to sell my business because I want to leave and go do something different. And that might be like a turnoff, especially to a buyer in the service industry, especially if there's any kind of key man risk, which I have a TikTok that talks about key man risk. So maybe we can link to that.
At Luke Heinecke.
Yeah.
Want to drop description?
If people don't know what key man risk is, then I explain that in that TikTok. But they're typically, that's going to be a turnoff, right? So they are typically in a service-based business unless like you're a really big company, like, well, not really big, but you're a big enough company that you have like a COO and you're literally just the CEO and you're not running like the day-to-day. Then you might be able to be like, yeah, I want to go do something else. And they'll take over and hire a CEO. But most of the time in a smaller company, like 30 employees or less, they're probably going to want you to stay on. But you can negotiate. Do you want it to be a contract? Do you want to be a W-2 employee? What do you want to do? And that can be all part of your negotiations. And you're going to have attorneys that you're going to pay to, now facilitate those negotiations. So that's going to be expensive. But yeah, I chose to stay on as an employee. I didn't want to leave the company. I was still having a lot of fun with what I was doing. And I really wanted to be a part post-acquisition because I also felt like I had a lot to learn from the acquiring company. And I didn't want to, I think this is like it still is, like I'm still doing it. This is my day job. That's what I was doing all day today. And I'm learning all the time. And so I think it's super valuable to be acquired and stay on because you're getting acquired by a $150 million company. They're going to know way more than you do. And so it's, again, I'm already leveling up my mindset again, where I'm like, they're like, hey, we want to add 300,000 in monthly recurring revenue in, 5 months. Tell us how much we need to spend to do that, and it's like, oh, how do I do that? And they're like, well, here's how, right? And I'm learning how to build like pro formas and, it's just stuff that I didn't know how to do already.
Awesome.
So
So, a question about like your checklists, like, because I know there's lots of different project management softwares, like, because when we first started building out systems, we just made a bunch of Google Docs and used like Google Docs. Then we explored like a couple different options and then landed. Even like once you land on one, it's like then like a year later, ClickUp comes out, and then there's they're always innovating. But I'm curious of like what you guys use for yours.
so we use Asana,
Okay, yeah.
pretty common like project management tool, but I don't think it matters what you use. I don't think there's like it's about
It's about
having
how you use it.
exactly. There you go.
Yes, sir.
So-
Just like a wiener.
Wanna zoom out of like the kind of like the technical business talk for a sec. And so you said that you like always had that goal of like when you were younger of like becoming a millionaire.
Yeah.
And I want to hear like how you see the world now today versus like back then, because like now you've reached that point, and I feel like whenever you reach a big goal, I feel like you kind of like relax a little bit and get a little bit of confidence of like, look, I did that, it's like, but when you're on the way to that goal, there's a lot of like, fake confidence or like convincing yourself that you're amazing when you're not, and just like a lot of like lying to yourself.
Visualization.
But once you get to that point where it's like you have the money, like you got it, you reached the goal, like how has that affected the way that you see yourself or like the world? Has it like confirmed anything about yourself, like beliefs or anything like that?
Yeah, that's so interesting. Interestingly enough, I think initially it was a huge letdown for me, because I made all this money and I was like, now what? Yeah. And what was weird is I had already been making so much money, because you have to be making money to get a good valuation on a business in the first place.
Yeah, definitely.
That I already had a lot of the stuff I wanted. Had some fancy cars and a house and some cool clothes and, whatever, right? Yeah. And so I was like, now what? And it was a big letdown because I realized that the thing that I was looking for all along was achievement and purpose. And I found achievement and purpose through setting goals, like micro goals and macro goals. I have a TikTok about that too. I think we should drop that. Because it's like that little pump of dopamine every time you hit that micro goal on your way to the macro goal. Yeah. And then you hit the macro goal. And initially it was really like disappointing for me. Yeah. Because I didn't think big enough, I think in some ways might have been part of the problem. But also I think I thought like I'd instantly wake up like super happy. Like that sounds crazy saying that, but I just had this like I had this vision of like, once I'm a millionaire, I'm just gonna be like
everything's gonna be like perfect.
Boom. Yeah. Yeah. And I woke up like alone in my house and spent Christmas Day like sitting there like like it was just like this big letdown.
Yeah. It makes me think of do you know who Ted Turner is? He's like a old like broadcast executive. I think he like founded like NBC or CBS or something. But I heard that his dad told him to, like when his dad died, he told Ted Turner to set goals so big that you're never going to achieve them in your lifetime.
That is awesome.
Because what you actually want is the progress of going towards a goal, not actually achieving the goal.
Oh. Just blew my mind.
So, because that's like
I love that.
A common thing, I feel like especially with entrepreneurs, is they have this, whether it's like, regardless of what number it is, it could be a millionaire, 10 million, 100 million. But once you get that thing, you're like, I don't know. I didn't plan this far, Yeah. And I feel like we put so much like pressure on that goal, like once I do this, I'm going to be a changed person and nothing else matters until I reach that goal. But once you get that goal, you're like, I'm the same person as I was back then. And like, you're sometimes in a worse place because you now don't have that thing that you've been working towards.
It's like on your birthday when they're like, do you feel any older? And you're like, no, I feel exactly the same as I did yesterday. It's so gradual.
So I think there's like a few really big takeaways to answer your question about like, or I think maybe it's Truman's question, but about how money kind of changes or changed my perspective at least, or how I see the world maybe a little bit differently. The first takeaway is I realized that no matter how much money I have, I need to stay goal oriented, and I need to keep looking ahead and setting new goals and bigger goals. I can't get complacent. The second thing I realized is, like, you always hear this saying about like how money doesn't buy happiness or whatever, right? And I actually don't think that's true at all. I think it's just the wrong saying, because like happiness is the wrong goal. Like it's the wrong thing to aim for. Like I think you need to like aim for like purpose, right? Like no one's going to wake up happy every day.
Right.
And like no matter how, like you have 20 billion, 100 billion, like you're not going to wake up happy every day. And it's like the wrong thing. Like, do you even want to be like just happy all the time? Like, no, you want to be like focused and driven and.
Yeah, it's kind of like, sorry to cut you off. It's like
Go
kind
for
of like in a love relationship with a spouse or partner. It's like if you try to like optimize for being 10 out of 10 in love every day, like that is like not going to happen just because like you're both two humans and it's not going to be at a peak for decades, you know?
Right.
But what you kind of are working towards is like a deeper connection and meaning. And that is like, that's like sometimes those deeper connections and meanings come from going through an argument and coming out the other side. You know, it's like not, if you're just optimizing for like 10 out of 10 love, you're going to avoid confrontation and you're going to avoid some tough stuff because you're like trying to just maintain like, no, we're happy, you know,
Yeah.
But it's like, that's, so it kind of relates to what you're saying. If you're optimizing for like happiness, then you're kind of like not going to take as much risk and stuff because you're just trying to maintain this like status quo of like, I don't want anything to change around me, you know? But if you're like optimizing for this like fulfillment or deeper purpose of progression, you know, then you're gonna like be willing to like burn your bridges and stuff, you know?
Yeah. So I think what you're really talking about is like asking yourself, how can I provide value to the world? Because that's where you're going to get purpose, right? Is if you feel like you're providing value to the world, that's where you say I have a purpose. And I think that people that live purpose-filled lives are ironically enough, the happiest people, if you want to call it that, because they feel like they have purpose in the world and they feel like they're providing a lot of value, whether they make a lot of money or not. I think the other takeaway from the money thing is like, it might get rid of all your money problems, but that doesn't mean you won't have other problems that you still haven't addressed. So I like checked myself into therapy right away and I was like, I need some therapy. There's some stuff I need to work through. It was great to have the time to be able to do that and the money to be able to do that. Mm-hmm. But also like you now have a new problem of trying to figure out what to do with all your money. Where are you going to put it all? You just sit it in the bank? No, you got to find investments. You got to find vehicles. You got to purchase assets. You have to put that money back to work for you. I have a TikTok about that too.
Honestly, seeing you and your dog in the Aston Martin, that's like, that's my biggest like dream living. Like that's how I want to spend my money, you know, dogs and cars.
I love this conversation because I feel like it is totally on topic with our podcast and what we've talked about before of like, it's even like knowing the difference between pleasure and happiness. Because like if I'm trying to optimize just like what makes Mike happy, I wake up in the morning and I'm like, you know, maybe it's that short-term thinking that's like, let me just go out and just go get lunch instead of like eating a green smoothie that tastes like shit, a shot of apple cider vinegar and some celery. Where it's like, that clearly isn't going to make me happier right now, but it's like over time, it's like same with like going to the gym, like it's not going to feel good, it's not going to be fun, but eventually the positive effects catch up to you And like some of the things that make you the happiest is by sacrificing in the short term. Like the satisfaction of hiking up Timp or doing a big accomplishment is because you went through the hours of pain hiking and enduring through, or like running a 40 miler, you know? And it's like, if we're constantly just like, oh, what's going to make me the happiest right now? Let me go, you know, just impulse buy a Xbox or, you know, do whatever it is versus like making short-term sacrifice.
Yeah. So I think there's something super powerful in that when you're talking about like pleasure and, you know, happiness and just kind of the differences there and what you're looking for. There's really like interesting in my own life, I've seen this really interesting correlation between my level of like happiness and the amount of effort I put into my day. So I'll give you an example. If I have a really low effort day where I sleep in and I don't go to the gym and I do all the things that make me happy, quote unquote, and I eat my fast food and I have my pie and whatever else I want to eat, ice cream, and I watch a movie before bed and, you know, have some drinks, and just like live the good life. I wake up the next day and I feel like shit. I'm like, what did I do with my day? And so one of the things that I've done to like post acquisition, and I sold 2 companies actually in the same year, but post acquisitions, is I've gotten back on a routine and I've got new goals, and I'm actually chasing, I want to become a pro, physique competitor.
Oh, nice.
So I have another show in March, and you guys came to my show,
That was
last
awesome.
year.
The Grand America,
Yeah.
Salt Lake.
Yeah, I'm going back in March. I'm going to probably do 2 back-to-back. I'm trying to get my pro card. So, but like this whole week and all last week, I get up at 6 a.m. I go straight to the gym. I go to work. Before I go to work, I do my day planner. So I go to the gym, get home, do my day planner, go to work. And then as soon as I'm done working, I hit the gym again. So I'm doing like 4 hours of gym a day, 3 to 4 hours of gym a day. I eat a meal every 3 hours. I have a timer on my phone. I have meal prep, and I eat every 3 hours all day. And some people are like, okay, wait, so you're like going to the gym for an hour and a half of weights and then like 30 minutes of cardio, and you're doing like an hour mobility workout, and then you're eating chicken, like asparagus and rice 5 times a day with like 6 eggs and like oatmeal, and that's making you happy? That sounds really weird.
Yeah.
But it is, because
weird. I'm just kidding.
It does though. Like it does. Like, cause you think like
Let
most.
us know in the comments if that's weird.
Yeah,
Yeah.
comment if Luke is weird.
Yeah, please, no,
Yeah,
please
all
do.
the W's in the chat stand for weird.
But for real though, like think about it. Cause most people, when they think of like, okay, maybe not most people, but when I was like poor and struggling and homeless in my car, the good life in my mind was on a beach with a drink,
Corona.
just, loaded, hop in my Ferrari and go do whatever I want every day. And that's like a recipe for sadness. That's like a recipe for sadness. Like that's like the worst. Like that's not going to be, you're not going to be happy doing that. Like if you are, I would be like, seriously, put that in the comments. If someone does that every day and they're super happy, I want to hear about that. Cause that sounds,
We want to come learn from you.
Yeah,
we want you on the pod.
Yeah. But no, I think that it's the routine and the consistency that makes me happy. I guess I can't speak for everyone else, but that's what makes me happy.
No, I 100%.
You have to like work for it.
Yeah.
Like it's not just like, oh, you get there, it's given to you, you've achieved it, and then you're forever living in nirvana. But it's like you have to work to get that lifestyle to feel as good as you feel.
Yeah.
I think it's just like redefining what happiness is. I feel like that's a really weird term to be able to throw on like a blanket statement over all of the human emotions of like positive emotions. We just throw happiness over everything. But it's like there's a difference between like spending your day just watching Netflix for 12 hours, like not
that you've ever done that.
It's like you think that is like what happiness is, but that is like actually like I don't know what word that would be, but it's
tar
like,
pit.
Depression.
Right.
No, I was watching this Y Combinator video that was talking about tar pit business ideas, and what makes it a tar pit is from a distance to animals, it looks like a freshwater pond. They come up to the pond, they step in it, they put their mouths in it, realize it's fucking tar, and then it's a graveyard in there. And they all disappear, and by the time you stepped in the tar pit, it's too late.
It's too late.
Where it's like things like Netflix or eating ice cream or whatever, like it's like your mind will give you like excuses for why it's like, oh, just this, you've had a bad day, so just to have that ice cream or whatever, until you've been eating ice cream every day for a month and your gut is growing.
Yeah. So I think closing out that thought though about how is life different, the big takeaway is I found out that the stuff that made me happy before I had money is the same stuff that makes me happy with money. So it's not the cars, it's not the house, it's not the clothes. Like I went to a UFC fight the other day and had floor seats. Never would have been able to do that, poor. And that's not the stuff that makes you happy. The stuff that makes me happy is getting up early, getting on my grind, aiming for new goals, working really hard towards whatever those goals are, and being consistent. And at the end of the week, I look back at my week, at my day planner, and I go, dude, you crushed all 6 of your meals on time every day. You woke up on time. You hit the gym twice. You got all of your work done. That's happiness for me, is I look back at my week and I crushed my week. And I could do that poor or with $1 million or with $10. I could do that and I could be happy.
Yeah, that is so savage, honestly. And it just makes me think of like, it's so weird, like your perspective on happiness. Sometimes in a moment, you don't think that you feel so happy. You don't realize. And then in hindsight, you notice how happy you are. And it makes me think of like when I was doing really, really heavy Instacart. Most of the time, like I was like dreading. I was like, I don't want to fucking do this shit, but I need to get some cash today. But then I would get in these flows where I have really fulfilling days where I'm like, I just listened to 3 JREs. I just did 30 Instacart orders. I got to deliver groceries for old women that can't even leave this place. I was like, it feels really good. I was like on my journaling shit, journaling every day for months. And like in that moment, if you would have asked me, I'd be like, I'm struggling. I'm in this really difficult time of my life. But then in hindsight, it's like, and even like going farther back, like when we were living in New Jersey, it's like in the moment, it's like, we're in the hood, we're working, we're struggling, we're not making any money. But then I reflect, I'm like, wow, some of the greatest relationships of my entire life came out of that situation.
Yeah.
Truman, Digital Jeff, even Adam was there, you know, like all sorts. I mean, I knew Adam before that, but all sorts of things came from that where in the moment my parents were like, are you crazy? You're sleeping on the floor. You're not making any money. Like, why are you doing this?
Yeah. It reminds me of, there's this dude named Steve Ranella that's kind of like a hunting dude. He's like friends with Joe Rogan, but it's like he says...
Bow hunting guy?
He does a little bit. He kind of does everything. He has a show on Netflix. But he says that like hunting is one of the things that is not fun while you're doing it, but it's fun after the fact to look back on. And I was like, that's applied to so many things. Like running, because when I was on my hunting trip with like 2 of my buddies, they were like, you having fun? Like they were genuinely, and I was like, no, like this sucks. Like we got up at 4 a.m. and took a 4-wheeler ride 45 minutes up the mountain in the freezing cold, and then hiked for an hour and a half just to get to the top of the summit to start like scouting.
Yeah.
I'm like, there's a lot more things that I could be doing right now if I want to have fun, you know?
Yeah.
But after the fact, like once I got home and like I'm like in my warm house, like I'm taking a shower, I'm like, that was dope. Like that was sick. And it's like that same thinking applies to like your day doing like grinding it out at the gym. It's like that, like there may be other things that you would like part of yourself would rather be doing in that moment, but like the larger part of you or like your higher self that wants to like optimize for fulfillment and satisfaction in a bigger sense is like loving it, you know? But like it's like some of that stuff sucks no matter what you do, but when you get to the end of the week and you look back on your week, you're like, I crushed that. And it's like what you're saying with Instacart, it's like that sucks when you're doing it, But when you get home, when you're driving home and you know that you crushed all that, you're like, I feel really like fulfilled. You know, it's like a fulfillment versus like this like dopamine hit of like satisfaction of like I just crushed a blast. I'm watching Netflix. It's like different levels of like satisfaction. You know.
Yeah. This is super interesting because I love like the conversation of like perspectives, and that's one of the things that I'm trying to milk out of you while you're here is like your perspective. And I'm curious, like a topic that we've talked about before that it has to do with like mindsets is like limiting beliefs. And like all of us have like been able to identify limiting beliefs and kind of work through them over the years. So I'm curious of like what were some of your limiting beliefs that you may have told yourself?
And how did you overcome them if you have?
Yeah. So I think that your perspective on money, it can be a huge limiting belief in the early days of a business if you don't come from money. Like I guess if you come from a very wealthy upbringing, that might be different. I came from a pretty middle class, like maybe upper middle class upbringing. So, you know, to me, asking someone for $3,000 a month seemed like a lot of money. And so that perspective on money really changes things, right? Because depending on how much you think money is how much you're going to assume other people think money is.
This is so true. This is very true.
I'll let you finish, but I think of one of our clients in Orem. I'm not going to say who. We all know who it is, but they're our biggest client.
Yeah, I know who they are.
And it's just like one of those situations where we send the invoice and it's boom paid like within 10 minutes, and it's like our best client, easiest work, and it's just like every time we go there, our mind is just like these guys, like this exists, you know, like these people, this way of living life is possible, you know.
Versus our shitty clients where we're pulling teeth for a $500 shoot because she's a one-man show.
Yeah.
And it's just totally different levels, different perspectives.
Yeah.
So with those like money limiting beliefs specifically, was there like a quick inflection point where things turned, or was it gradual over time where it was like first you had to kind of work through making kind of like the buddies that you would meet, like you mentioned, $50K a year, then it was $500,000, then it was like how quick was that transition?
Unfortunately for me, it was slow. It was exactly what you just described.
Yeah.
So I started out thinking like $2K a month, all right. And then, you know, you only know what you hear about, right? So like growing up in my house, it was like, yeah, somebody makes so-and-so, they make $120,000 a year. Ooh, dang, that's a lot of money. So in my mind, $120,000 a year, that was a lot of money. So if I could make 60 as like a 19-year-old, I was like, that's a lot of money. I'm doing well. I'm well on my way to make $120,000 a year.
Yeah.
And so if that's what you're aiming for, then maybe eventually you'll get there. Right? So for me, it happened very slowly. And then I was like, oh, wait, you made $120,000 in 3 months selling alarms? Oh, dude, you're making $500,000 a month? And so it like slowly leveled up my thinking and to where I could ask people for more money. The craziest thing, though, is like where I'm at now financially. There's months where I've spent like over $100,000 in a month of like my personal money. And like, it's whatever. It's stuff that I needed or wanted.
Yeah.
Which is like, now I realize going back in time, I'm like, I could have asked these people for so much more money. Like I could have charged my clients so much more than I charged them.
Is it easier for you to accept making larger purchases? Because like from a poor man's perspective that I might know a little bit about, you might like buy a new camera or a new computer and spend like a couple $1,000s and then feel like regret or guilt afterwards where you're like, oh fuck, I need to spend that money, or should I have spent it on something else, or
like scarcity.
That can really mess with your mindset. Whereas like when you're making a big purchase, are you feeling those same feelings of like
just had a bigger like,
or are you like, oh, but I'm not even stressing because I know that my business is a money making machine. So if I spend this money, it's not like you didn't get to a financial point and then stop making money, and then you're slowly from that point on moving backwards. You're like constantly making more money, so you're more free to spend it.
So a lot of it's like passive income now for me.
Yeah.
Like I have some sources of passive income, which is nice because I don't ever worry about spending my passive income. Like I'll spend, sometimes I'll spend all of my passive income in a month. Not saying I should do that. Not setting an example here by any means. Because I still have a long ways to go, right? On my journey. I don't think I've reached, I'm still at the bottom of the mountain. That's how I feel about it. But I will say, like, the way you feel about money and the way you pay your bills and the way you treat merchants will be the way like people treat your business. It'll be the clients you have. It'll be everything else. So if you hold those limiting beliefs, you're going to attach yourself to clients who hold the same limiting beliefs because, that's just how it's going to be. It's like a law of attraction type of thing.
Yeah.
And so if you look at money and you're like, my services are worth, truthfully $300 an hour, and we do the best work. There's realistically not a company around that's going to charge this person less than $300 an hour. Yeah. That's how much I'm going to charge. And if anybody asks me for a discount, I'll be like, no, sorry, go find somebody else. That's what I charge. Then you're going to find clients that pay you $300 an hour.
Yeah. I feel like this kind of makes me think about respect. Like, where it's like, if you're a person that has no respect, you're going to attract a lot of disrespect in your life. Versus if you're a respectful individual who treats other people with respect, you start to see that respect shown back to you because that's how respect works. It's a two-way road. It's not just like one way and then you force someone to respect you. It's like when you show respect, other people are going to show that same respect back to you because they saw that you were a respectful person. Even
self-respect, like the way that you carry yourself as an individual is going to be how people treat you back. If you're just giving out your time to everyone and you're not valuing your own time, then people are just going to like take as much time as they need from you or whatever. But if you're the type of person that you value your own time and you're proactive in like, hey, I only do 20-minute meetings. I don't do hour-long meetings. Like people are going to respect your time more because you're doing it for yourself first,
Yeah. I think the biggest thing you can do to like level up your money mindset though is look outside of like your own comfort zone, right? So a great example of this is like, think about like Jeff Bezos, right? He just bought like a $500 million super yacht.
Yeah.
Does that sound right?
Yeah.
It was like 500 million.
Wait,
And Jeff Bezos, he bought like a $500 million super yacht. So just really quick for a second, this really happened. Okay, you hear about it in the news, but let's just really think about it for a second. What percentage of his like net worth is that? He has like 200 billion, so it's 0.25.
Yeah, that's
0.25%.
Yeah.
So let's just say that you have $100,000. Okay.
Zero, 0.025.
Okay. Give me the equivalent for 100,000
of his wealth.
Yeah,
like what's 100K?
Yeah, what's 100K? What's 0.025 of 100,000?
His net worth is what? What was we started?
Well, no. What is 0.025 multiplied by 100,000 to find the relative amount of money to someone who has 100K versus someone that has 200 billion?
I want to say it's like $250.
This is 2,500.
Okay, 2,500.
Still though.
Okay, so you still have.
It's like getting a new iPhone.
Yeah, you still have $97,000 left. Interestingly, relatively speaking, it's still way less. It's still actually $2,500 to someone who has 100,000 is still way more than 500 million to someone who has 200 billion.
Right.
Does that make sense as to why that would be way more, right? Because like if you have 200 billion, you spend a billion even, you still have 199 billion.
Yeah.
Okay. So realistically though, let's think about it. How many companies helped make that super yacht? There's probably TVs on it. There's probably all sorts of vendors that made money on a $500 million yacht purchase. Why couldn't you be the company that's selling those $500 million yachts? And let's say that they pulled a profit margin of like 25 to 30%, which I don't think is ridiculous. What's 30% of 500 million? It's like, what?
It's literally like making the commission on an acquisition.
Sure.
Like selling that one
Selling the
ship
business
to
itself.
Jeff Bezos is like selling your company for $500 million.
Yeah, 165.
165 million. So the company, let's just assume the company that made that yacht made 165 million on one yacht in profit.
That is savage.
So the point I'm trying to make is like how much money you have and how much money you're willing to spend and how you see money is going to also like dictate like the types of businesses you think about starting or investing in, because like,
Oh, yeah.
are you going to go like, look, there's a market for people who have tons of money. I was in Vegas and there's like $2,000 sweaters. I would never buy a $2,000 sweater. That's ridiculous.
But someone else will.
But I'm wearing like a $200 sweater. But like 5 years ago, I wouldn't, no way in hell am I buying a $200 sweater, you know?
Was the money mindset something that you learned more so through mentors, or were there specific books that also helped with this?
It was more just like
Or just observing. Like,
observing,
reality.
yeah. I think it was just observing and just realizing that like there's no limit of money. One thing whenever I'm feeling a limited belief about money come on, I like to just look at I-15, like the freeway here. There's like 1,000 cars on it every minute.
Yeah.
Those cars are $40,000 each, and everybody driving those cars is making an average. If you look at Utah's average income, I think it's like $60,000 per year. Do that math: 1,000 times 60 times. You don't really need to do it, but I'm just saying it's like millions and millions of dollars, right? Mm-hmm. On the freeway in like a 30-second time span. There's money everywhere. Yeah. There's no limit of money on this earth. There's tons of money.
Yeah.
So
especially even more so today. Like maybe like back then, if you've considered like the gold standard and whatever that, but it's like now it's like they're just printing this out of thin air at this point, you know. So it's like
So I think like, you know, for me, I guess, you know, where I'm at right now, my headspace right now, you didn't ask this, but I'll just share it, is my headspace right now is not so much. I think initially I was super motivated to find a business that I could make a lot of money at, because I wanted to make a lot of money. And we've talked about this before. You guys are you've been there too, where you're just like, how do we make money? Mm-hmm. So I think that's like a thing. It's like, I don't want to exclude, like, I think young, hungry people, you know, men and women that are like entrepreneurial, that like one of their big goals is they want to make money.
For sure. Yeah.
I think for most people. But now I'm more of the headspace of like, how do I do something that gives me purpose? How do I do something that provides value? And how do I do something that I enjoy, that I can do, you know, day in and day out? So I wish I'd had that mindset earlier on. I think I would have done things differently.
Do you think you would have like went a different path? Like if you like knew back then in your early 20s that, like, would you have started a different business if you were optimizing more for like
the purpose route,
providing value, stuff you love, you want to do, value, you know, that type of thing?
No, I would have started the same business. Like if I had the knowledge I had now, is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
I would have started the same business, and I would have been the first to write a ton of content about it, because nobody had content back then.
Yeah.
That's
one of my
the key.
questions was actually, if you could go back in time and have a conversation with your younger self, what would you tell them so you could achieve what you have now in half the time?
Write content.
So, yeah, I feel like that's what you... Yeah.
And listen to Audible books and have a schedule every day, and don't have FOMO. Don't look at what other people are doing on Instagram or Facebook and be like, oh man, I spent my whole weekend working and all my friends went snowmobiling. Because those people, in 20 years from now, they might still be snowmobiling on the weekends with, you know, a ton of debt and a ton of stress and an unhappy marriage and a bunch of other shit that you don't want. Mm-hmm. So you don't need to care about what other people are doing. If you want to be successful, you need to focus on your goals and forget about everything else.
Yeah. It's interesting because, like, when we started Temple Mill, we knew that we, of course, wanted to make money, but also we were very driven by the purpose aspect of, like, me and Truman got validation from being the guys to create videos for so many notable people. Like, right before we started Temple Mill, like, we were working with celebrities. And then when we started Temple Mill at the beginning, we were lucky enough to have like celebrity clients that were working with us out the gate. But then we got to a point where it felt like we were lying to ourselves and these money limiting beliefs, because we had so much pride over like making sure the video came out so great. Mike and Truman are the ones doing it, that we wouldn't delegate. We were afraid to delegate until probably at least a year or two after we had started Temple Mill, where we were like, bro, let's be honest with ourselves. We do want to hit these financial goals. As much as we do actually love like, you know, the creative fulfillment of going on shoots and whatnot, we also want to make more money so that we can take this to the next level, so that we can buy new cameras without thinking twice, buy the computers we need, get the office we need, and not struggle. And that was very difficult for us to transition into, because I mean, I feel like we're still transitioning into it. I've really resonated with like your waves of failure throughout like your entrepreneur journey, because I've seen that with us. Like I feel like we're right past the second wave because we've had like an initial really big failure.
2020 was the big one.
It's like we had to fire our team that was personal friends, and I had to move in. Truman and I like moved into different places, and like that was like a very difficult period for us, but it was like the thing that we absolutely had to do to be able to strip back and be like, all right, we can't just be doing all types of videos. What specifically type of video do we want to do? We started with personal brands, because we're like, that's at our core what we were the best at. Like what we had even started with was Gerard's personal brand. And even now to what we do today, we're hyper focused on personal brands. That is still even a rabbit hole of multicam setups, podcasts, live streaming, even niching down. It's still a big niche. Like there's still, like with video specifically, so many types of videos that you could do, and like condensing that down, it's like just each time that we rebuild, like we're essentially reinventing Temple Mill, where like we look at it as like Temple Mill 1.0 was when we first started. Temple Mill 2.0 was after the 2020 crash, was we rebuilt and we're like, systems AF. We need systems was like a huge breakthrough that we had as entrepreneurs. And then right now we're currently in Temple Mill 3.0, which is like really leaning into focusing in on our offer and simplifying, taking influence from Chick-fil-A, fast food menus, the repeat Tesla. Tesla, you could buy a Tesla from your phone. Before, you don't buy cars on your phone. But Elon made the checkout process so simple, you could buy something that's worth $100,000 just from your phone. And we're like, we've got a high ticket offer that normally is very complicated, so many middlemen, whatever. What if we make it so simple to check out with video production, just like a Tesla, that you could do it from your phone? And then it just pushes us farther down this journey of like identifying, you know, who do we need to bring on next? Well, like what it's like, this is something that we've also talked about before. It's like the goal for us isn't to just not work. It's not to like retire to a beach and drink pina coladas all day in Mexico. The goal is to be able to choose what we're working on, maximize ourselves, and do it in a way that we want to do it. We don't want to have like a boss. We want to have our own company, our own culture, build it our own way, and thinking of like, what's the work that I want to be doing every day? And mostly what that conversation like ends up as is like, let's just make TikToks for Truman's page. Let's make content for our personal brands. And that's going to be the beacon. Like every time we've gotten new clients or projects, it's always because we put out a dope ass video. Yeah. Or even if it wasn't immediately, we put out a dope ass video, then one day later we get a client. It's like we get a client because they're like, bro, I saw your video you did for Gerard 6 months ago, and I knew you were the only guys I could work with. Like I didn't want to work with anybody else. And it's given us a lot of loyalty with our clients too, where it's like, we don't want we do one shoot with you, then we're done. Like we want to work with you for years. Like we want to keep on like improving. Like we want to grow with our clients, you know? Yeah. We notice, our clients are also scaling. We need to be able to scale with them, or we get lost in the dust. If we're just the Mike and Truman 2-man show that go out and fucking do it all just us, you know? Yeah. We're not going to be able to grow with linear as you guys get more clients and need. It's like, guys, we got 2 shoots this weekend. What are we going to do?
Yeah.
We miss out on an opportunity because we weren't ready for it.
And there's like 2 things there I want to comment on. First one is you talked about how you want to make the money first so that you can work on what you want to work on. And I think that that's definitely headed in the right direction for you, because that is one thing. Money might not give you instant happiness or instant solve all your problems, but it does give you options.
Yeah.
Once you have money, you can go, okay, what do I want to do today? I don't have to worry about my bills. So what do I want to do? In you guys' case, what do we want to work on? We have the money coming in. What projects do we want to work on? So I think that's the head in the right direction. But then I have a question for you. You were talking about earlier how you started delegating stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm just curious, just honest answer. Do you feel like now that you've been delegating stuff, you're getting like sometimes even just as high of quality work or sometimes even higher quality work?
I would say definitely.
Yeah.
But it came with trust issues. Because one of our downfalls of Temple Mill 1.0 was we delegated to someone without systems.
Wrong person.
And they dropped the ball and we lost 2 massive clients because they made a mistake and we trust them too quick. So we had to fire that person and restart over after losing potential $12K per month reoccurring revenue from these 2 clients. But then, so we had to fire 2 of our team members, but one of them, it was like, you're getting fired because you fucked up really badly. And the other one was just like, no hard feelings. We just, the COVID had just happened. We don't have shoots. Fend for yourself, essentially.
Yeah.
And so the client, that person we stayed in touch with is Easton. And he's been working with us for years throughout our journey. And he's someone where, like, he's such a good technician. He knows the technical side of why there's interference between the microphones, or why, like, certain things that, like, me and Truman come from just, let's make it look good based on what we see, but not from, like, studying how IT and cameras work or whatever. Whereas, like, he was the opposite. And so it took some time for us to, like, have that trust in him, but he built that trust himself by showing us, like, guys, I'm going to be trying to give the best. And he did his own projects outside of Temple Mill and was constantly growing and improving himself to where we could give him that trust and say, okay. But, I mean, that was after 3 years of working with him. And even today, it's still hard letting go of that control.
Yeah. So it's super interesting because, and the reason I asked that question is because I heard this back in the day when I was really struggling to delegate. I heard this rule that was like, hire someone who's 70% as good as you, train them to be 80% as good as you, and then just be content with it. Mm-hmm. And I thought at the time, I was like, that's actually really good. And I still think it's good advice, right? But what's crazy is, like, I think it's actually kind of an ego-driven statement to think that you're 100%. Yeah. Because what I've found is my team today is so much better than I ever was at everything they do. For one thing, because they're not scattered. They're doing one job over and over again. Yeah. And so they're getting really good at it, right? Because all they're doing is, I'm just doing design, just doing ads. So we have all these different roles, just doing copy, just writing content, right? Like, how can I be as good when I'm designing and running ads and writing blogs and trying? Like, you can't be, because you're pulled in too many directions. And the real problem is you shouldn't be in the first place. So I think that's a good saying, like, hey, find someone who you think 70% as good as you, train them to 10%, be happy with 80%. But at the same time, I'm like, that's kind of an ego-driven statement, because I actually think my employees today are better at their jobs than I ever was.
Yeah.
And I think you'll find the same thing as you continue to delegate.
We hired a few VAs, like on top of like remote editors, on top of like our other projects that we do, like with in person, like with Easton. And so I've been kind of like going through the process of managing them over the past probably 9 months since we had them, and I've been learning a lot. And like something that like I was reminded of when you were saying that is like I would like try to do like provide so much context for them to do the job that it was like almost like an insult to their intelligence.
Oh yeah.
Like, click here.
Yeah, click here.
Double click on
Scroll
Premiere.
to the bottom of the page.
Like I have like it's like at that point I'm basically doing the job, you know? And a lot of it is like, especially for like creatives or someone that's like has a service business where they started out doing the service themselves. At least for me, I feel like there's like a lot of identity changes that you have to go through of like letting go of like the fulfillment that you get from doing that. Like, cause like we're the ones making the videos and we got a lot of praise. Like, Mike and Truman, that video's dope, you know?
Yeah.
But then like
ego.
Ego. And then
Yeah.
Like creator
when you
ego.
like let that go and it becomes like, oh, Temple Mill made a cool video. It's like, in a way we're getting that, but it's not as cool as like, yo, Mike, that video was sick, you know? And like, so you have to like let go of that thing and like have your team get that like praise.
Yeah.
And like, and also like, you kind of have to like I come from like a blue collar farming type family, and I feel like a lot of like the limiting beliefs back there is like that you get value from the work you do, like, you know, like building a house or like digging a ditch. And like when you get into this like phase of like knowledge work or like building like businesses where you're like on a computer, it's like doesn't feel the same as like digging a ditch and like seeing that ditch at the end of the day, or like building a patio. Like I did landscaping for 6 years and with my dad, and there's a feeling that you get when you like finish a patio, when it like the day you started, like that day when you started work it wasn't there, and then when you leave you're cleaning up and it's there. It's like sometimes you don't get that same fulfillment in like building a information type business. And like I got that feeling from making a video because it was like something that I could like complete. Yeah. But then it's like my work role changes from being the doer, like the building the stuff, to like manager, you know? Yeah. And that's like a big shift because you have to kind of like change your like where you get your fulfillment from, or like your satisfaction, or like your feeling of like I did a good job, you know?
Well, and that's a great point, and I want you guys to be able to get through all the questions, so I won't go off on this too long. But you know, I think like it kind of like the grind culture, and like I'm not saying like I like a ton of Gary Vee's stuff, like the video you sent me, but there's like, you know, the picture of him like sleeping in the airport, and the truth is like maybe he has so many irons in the fire that he really does grind that hard, and that's cool for him. Yeah. But if you have like one small business, or even two small businesses, and you're working really hard, chances are you're probably doing something wrong, because you should be sitting at the helm of a board of management that tasks are being delegated to, and you should be overseeing that those tasks are being fulfilled and looking for constant ways to improve your team and your processes. And if you're doing all the work, you're doing something wrong. And so that, you know, there's no way you can grind. Like you don't need, like, what is that? A meeting every beginning of the week, middle of the week, and end of the week for an hour to run a company? That's about what it takes, maybe. And a few hours on the side of doing stuff that maybe nobody else can do at that point in time until you hire someone to do it. You could run like, you know, 3 or 4 companies if you're sitting in a board position and you're running them and you're overseeing them and you're not doing the daily work. Mm-hmm. So I think that like the grind culture leads entrepreneurs of small businesses to think that they need to be running around like chickens with their head cut off, doing everything, checking in, micromanaging, blah, blah, blah. It's like if you hire a team of good people, you give them expectations, you let them do their job, and you oversee it, and you realize you're going to have, in a service-based business, you're going to have a certain amount of churn, customers who leave. In a product-based business, you're going to have a certain amount of customers that complain or send the product back. And you get ahead of those problems, and you look for ways to continuously drop your churn and to improve your product or to improve your service, to improve your team, and you delegate those, then you're doing it right. But if you're just grinding, you're doing something wrong. So that's why I'm not like a huge proponent. I mean, I guess unless you're just creating content all the time, like I can see how you could fill your day. Like if I was like, hey guys, I'm leaving this podcast to go on another podcast, to go on another podcast, to, you know, go shoot my own TikToks. So it's like, I guess you could grind really, really hard, you know, doing that. But to run a business, and if that's the only thing you're doing, I don't think you should be grinding that hard. Right. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no. Yeah, definitely. It reminds me of something that Andy Frisella, do you know who that is?
Yeah, of course. 90 days hard or
75.
75 days?
90 days hard.
It sounds like a personal problem.
75 hard.
But he said on a podcast, it's like I hate when people like come up to me, or like when I say like like, how's your day going? Or, like,
Yeah.
what's up? And people are like, oh, man, I'm just busy. It's been crazy, man. I'm just working so hard. Like my days are full. And he's like, when you get to a certain, like, caliber, like, you sound, like, dumb.
Yeah.
Because it's like what that says to us is that you're mismanaging your whole day.
Oh my
like,
gosh,
you're not being smart with how you're managing your time. You shouldn't be doing all this, like what you just said. Like, if you're doing all this stuff, you're doing it wrong by nature.
That's so interesting. One of my very first ever like mentors and family friends, I worked for him when I was like 18, 19 doing manual labor, but he was a multimillionaire, like super smart guy. And I was always of the mindset I wanted to be successful. So one day I knew he was a multimillionaire. I knew he had bought and sold like 3 different businesses. He had rental properties. He had all these things going for him. And so I was like, hey, Dave, what do you think makes the difference between super successful people that, really well off and people who aren't successful? And he like sat on it for a second. And I was expecting like this blow by blow breakdown answer that was going to be my path to success. And I'm sitting there
Golden
like,
ticket.
yeah.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, people that are successful, they really know how to prioritize their time. And I was like, oh, okay.
Like, is that it?
Well, more than that, right?
Yeah.
And it's crazy because what you just said and where I'm at now in life, it's like literally that is the answer. Like, you're either working smart and you're like prioritizing and planning your day and you know what you need to do and you know what actually matters, or you don't. There's no in between.
It's like when people talk about like leverage, like do the activities or take the actions that have the most leverage, where you can put in one input of action and you get 10 out, versus like you're just putting in 1 and getting 1 back,
Yeah.
Like versus like if you're working, doing all of the technical stuff of your business, you're just working and you're like grinding that out. But you can build a system, like build a job scorecard to hire someone to do that job. And on the initial run, you may have to put in a lot more work to build that one thing. But once that like job thing is built and you hire someone, then you don't have to do that anymore and you can move on to something else.
Exactly.
Question. So how much of the systems, so something that you mentioned earlier, once you came back around to Linear 3.0 and you'd fired your last like OG employee,
Yeah.
and you said you hired a woman who was like really good.
Yeah.
How much of her systems did you have to build for her prior to her coming on versus her being better than you and building better systems than you could have? Because like for me as an entrepreneur, we go through these waves where it's like we spend so much time trying to build out every single system, like versus
You can
do
get
bring
stuck
on the
just
like
building
sometimes we'll
another
build out
system,
an
another
offer, a
system.
landing page, a system. In our eyes, it fails or it doesn't do as well as we expected. We pivot. We just lost all that time that we wasted building those systems, or at least retain some of it. Versus, like, how much of it did you know you needed? You had built out prior to just plug someone in, versus like trusting the employee to build out their own systems.
That's a great question. I mean, I go back to like 7 Habits of Highly Effective People for this question, where he talks about begin with the
Mike's
end in
boy.
mind. Like, if you're not thinking about what your end goal is, then you can't build processes because you don't really know where you're headed.
Yeah.
So I think the thing that helped me is I knew exactly what I wanted to build. And so I built out the structure of like a 50-person company, even though I had 1 employee. And I was like, okay, I'm going to need this many people here, this many people here. Here's how many people we need to manage X number of revenue. And then I did the math to find out if it was profitable.
Yeah.
And then once it was profitable, I was like, okay, this is profitable. We can scale this model. And then I started building processes, and I had her help me, and she improved like the ideas and the way we set processes up, and introduced me some project management tools and things like that.
So you had built out the model
Yeah, the business
before,
model.
and then she helped build out the processes to.
I had her write down everything she did each day, and then basically kind of audited her time. And then we figured out, okay, you need to do this, 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 and this when you start. And then what we started asking questions. So we used like Scrum, not the whole technique, but there's a technique from Scrum, if you're familiar with that, where at the end of the project you ask what went well, what could have gone better. So every time we had a client that we onboarded, we'd go, what went well? Okay, we did this, this, and this. They really liked this. Great, let's keep that as our processes. What could we have done better? And we went back and said, oh, well, they didn't like this. This took too long. We didn't set the right expectation here. And then we were like, hey, you know, we need an intake form where we ask them all these questions.
Sorry, keep going.
Okay. And now we have an intake form. So now what we have is an intake form that we have 4 questions on, right, to begin with, or 5 questions. It's a minimum viable product. But then we go through another one. What went well? What could we have done better? Hey, we need to add this question and this question. And to this day, like yesterday, we added a new question to that intake form. It has like 40 questions now. Like, we're always getting better.
It evolves.
Yeah,
but you have to have a minimum viable product, but you also have to know where you're headed, and you can't just scrap things. I don't think you can just scrap things unless you have a really good reason.
It's like that. What I was going to say is like, it's almost like you're being really scientific with it. It's like you have your process. Like, let's just say it's like your onboarding process. It's like, that's what it is. Okay, let's go test it out with this new client. And you run them through, you ask those 2 questions, and then you add some stuff onto it. It becomes a little bit better. And then you move forward, you keep adding on. And so it's like, you keep it constant for the most part until you add stuff on, keep it moving. But it, like, that compared to how most people run their business is they're winging it every time that they get a new client, and they don't know what they're doing. Like, they don't know a good client onboarding experience from a bad one. Like, they just hear the remarks like afterwards of like, yo, that sucked, but they couldn't go back and articulate why it went well, why it didn't go right, you know?
Yeah. And I think one of your processes has to be, in a service-based business, this isn't going to apply if you have a product, right? But you have to have like a company policy and some sort of client expectation. So like if you go to Jiffy Lube to get your oil changed and you're like, hey, I want you guys to shine my shoes for me. They're going to be like, oh, I'm sorry, sir. We don't do that because we don't shine shoes. Yeah. So you have to have like boundaries and expectations and like a list of services. And if you go to Jiffy Lube and you're like, hey, can you replace my transmission? I don't think they do that, but they're probably like, no, but we can refer you to someone who can, right? Yeah. So like in a service-based business, it's especially a creative business, like how many iterations are you giving them? Mm-hmm. Like you need to have everything dialed in. And then when a client asks you for something that's out of scope, you have to have the courage to say no, and they'll respect you for it. Yeah. And if they don't, you need a new client. And so that was like something.
If they can't respect your boundaries, then you're going to continue to have problems down the line that
so
you don't want.
Just imagine, I'll go back to a question earlier where we were talking about perspective. How do I see things differently now? Like from a client perspective, I don't care about clients' opinions nearly as much. Like we have a big team, we have a lot of clients. So do I care about my clients? Absolutely. But if a client comes to me and is super disrespectful and is like, we don't want to pay our bill because of this, and we don't like this, and we're really unhappy with it, I'm going to go, okay, well, according to your contract, you need a 30-day notice. I'd love to go to bat for you and fix these problems. If you don't want us to do that, go ahead and put in your notice. We'll get you canceled out, get you offboarded, and we'll go from there. But if you don't want to work with us, and it's going to be a huge pain to work with you, then I don't think that's a good fit for us, right? Yeah. Obviously, I'm going to word it way more tactfully than that. But what I'm getting at,
you're not desperate for that client.
And I think as a small company, you need to imagine that you have hundreds of millions of dollars and you don't need the money. And you need to go, if I didn't need the money and I was just doing this because, and I'm going to follow my processes and stick to my boundaries because I do not need this money. What I need is a client who respects my boundaries. Then you're going to have better client outcomes. You're going to have better client relationships. You're going to have a better business because you're going to be able to tell your clients no. And that's going to help you stick to your processes, and you're not going to end up winging it because if they ask for something you don't do, you're going to say, I'm sorry, we don't do that.
Mm-hmm. Dude, this is very interesting because it makes me think of a conversation we had with one of your clients when we were in Philadelphia on a project. And they were talking about the difference between developers that they've worked with in different countries. And they said that in one country, I'm not going to say which country to which because I don't remember exactly, but in one country, the developers will notoriously say yes to everything and say that they can just do it.
I remember that.
And that seems on the surface like a good thing because it's like, oh, they can do it. Whereas he said the developers in a different country will actually tell you no. And they'll say, no, sir, this is actually going to take 30 developers, or this is way out of scope, you know. Right. And that's actually what you're looking for. But in the moment, saying no is so difficult.
Yeah. And I mean, think about it though. Like when you go to a big company for a service or a product, like you almost respect when they tell you no. And it also sets like a tone for the relationship. Like if you go into Verizon Wireless today and you're like, hey, I want $50 off my monthly bill and I want a free iPhone. And we're like, no, I'm sorry, sir. They're not going to be disrespectful to you, but they're just going to be like, no, I'm sorry, I can't do that. But you're like, oh, yeah, but I do like my Verizon service. My phone's pretty cool, so I guess I'll just keep paying for it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. But as a small company, I feel like it's so easy to get bullied by like clients in like, especially in a service-based industry, because you're like, oh, I need them to pay their bill this month, right? But as soon as you like let them know that and you let them bully you and you do stuff that's out of scope, like you're already done. Like that relationship's already over. Or you've already sacrificed your company's profits or something.
Because once they know that like you're gonna budge on something, I feel like they
give a mile.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I wanna be cognizant of time here and start wrapping up. But I have a question on goals. Like you're very goal oriented. How do you decide like what size goal to go after? Because I feel like in my life, it's like I'm always either setting them like way too low where I'm not being excited and motivated to go after it, or I'm setting them like fucking in the sky and I'm like I'm like super motivated, but I'm like, okay, where do I start? Like, what do I do Monday, you know? Yeah. And I want to hear your perspective on whether it's like a business or fitness one. How do you approach setting goals and more importantly, achieving those goals?
Yeah. So I think just giving you an example might be the best way to answer the question. So, like I said, I did a show, my first NPC show last year in April, and I prepped for like 12 weeks, right? And my goal was to win the contest. I ended up taking second, but in order to set the goal, I consulted with like experts, people who trained competitors for shows and knew how long it took. They knew what to eat. They knew what to do. And so I listened to their advice and I followed the diet. I followed the posing regimens. I followed their exercise routines, and I did what they said, and I stayed on schedule, and I got to the show, and I put, I think, the best package together that I could have put together at the time. And so preparing, like setting that goal, my goal was to go win the show, get my pro card, and just, look phenomenal, right? Bring my best package on stage. So setting the goal, before I set the goal, I didn't just like walk in 3 weeks before the show and say, oh, I'm going to do a show, hire a coach, I'm going to get ready. Like I did some research and I was like, okay, how long does it take to prep for a show? What do I need to know? What poses do I need to know? What should I be practicing? What are other people doing this? What are they doing? And then I set what I felt like was a realistic timeline for me to hit that goal. So, like in, I think any goal that you're trying to achieve, you need to look at other people who've achieved it. And then like, I'm not saying limit yourselves to their timeline. If it took them 10 years to do something, feel free to go out and try to do it in a year. But at least find out why it took them 10 years and what they had to do to get there. Yeah. Maybe reach out to that person or other people like them. Find out what you need to do to head in that direction. What books do you need to read? What skill sets do you need to have? If you're going to be an investor, what other investors have turned, $2 million into 10 million? How'd they get there? What did they invest in? What advice would they give you? What's a realistic timeline for hitting 10 million? Is it a year, 2 years, 3 years? Does it depend on your risk tolerance? Like, I think there's going to be different answers to those, but I try to set realistic goals by consulting with people who've already achieved the goals that I want to achieve, or like, I like to read autobiographies or biographies because those are a really good idea, like really good way to get into someone else's frame and see how they thought throughout their life as they approached goals. I just finished reading Total Recall, which is like Arnold's.
I've read that probably three times in my life, and like that book, along with like Dave Goggins' Can't Hurt Me.
That's a great one too.
Those two books were like, my life was like different after. Like it was like I read it and I was like, okay, like I'm so inspired. Like not just like momentarily inspired, but like I feel like I like got in a grasp of life in a totally new way, you know?
Yeah.
So that it's interesting because your perspective on goals is also very serious and committed versus like when I think of goals that I failed in the past, like when I was 19, I was like, oh, I want to own a bar before I'm even old enough to go inside of one. Yeah, I said that maybe one time, but then I never made that wasn't even necessarily something that I genuinely, really, truly wanted. And I wasn't serious. I wasn't committed versus like the way that you're approaching goals. It's like, you don't set a goal to not hit it. Like you don't just set it for the idea of like, yeah, I want a mansion. And then you just live your life and hope you get it. But it's like when you set that goal, you're going to go find other people that achieve that goal. You're going to do the work. You're going to stay disciplined and focused. And, like, have you ever been like super discouraged from not hitting goals or goals taking longer than you expected?
Oh yeah, for sure. I also think that you can have like, you can not know how close you are to a goal too. You don't always have 20/20 like vision that you're close to a goal. And so if you like quit, you stop, you might be really close and you just quit right before you were there.
Yeah.
But yeah, when I was, aiming to scale linear, those first and second times both, and then I failed, was like the most discouraging thing ever. And I had, people that I loved, family members, friends, like, kind of like they talk down to you, but like they don't even realize, I don't even fault them for it because they don't even realize they're doing it.
I noticed this also.
But they're like, you should get a job where my son works, he's making good money and, I think you should, get more realistic with what you're trying to do in life,
Yeah.
And,
because that's what their reality has told them.
Right.
So they don't believe that it's
pursuit
possible.
of happiness, right? Where he's like, don't ever let anyone tell you you can't do anything. Because they can't do it.
It's like they can't see what you see inside your mind. Like it's
Right.
like they're in all reality they could be just trying to like help you,
Sure.
But it's like
good intentions.
Yeah, good intentions. But it's like that's why you have to like stay committed to like your vision because it's like only you can see that.
Yeah.
People aren't gonna. Which is another thing that Andy Frisell talks about is like don't expect other people to believe in you when you're starting out because like they're not going to until they actually see the office building. Like it's like don't expect them to believe in you. Like they're not going to.
Yeah, I think like my first, reel that I posted on Instagram the other day advertising my TikTok got like 40 likes. But like in 2 years from now I'm gonna have 1 million, and everyone now can look at me and be like, haha, yeah, whatever. But I'm going to be consistent.
Yeah,
and consistency is
what.
That's right. That's what happens when you're consistent. Is you get results. So I think the second part of your question was, how have I overcome those? Being disappointed from not hitting a goal. And one of the big things that's helped me overcome that is, I heard this saying, and I don't remember where I heard it. I wish I could give someone credit, but it went something like, don't wish it were easier, wish you were better. And
That's sad.
like there was so many times for my last, when I failed as a business, when I'm like, man, I wish it was easier to run a business. I wish it was easier to find good people. I wish it was easier to find good clients. When I was prepping for my show and I was eating avocado and chicken and zucchini 5-6 times a day and doing 2.5 hours of cardio and 2 hours of weights and working 10-hour days, I was like, I wish it were easier. I wish I had better genes, like I wish there was all these things different so I could just look the way I want to and go win. But it's not ever going to be easier. So wishing for it to be easier is like pointless as hell. So
it's also kind of like a victim mentality.
Right.
So I started shifting that to like, I wish I was better. I wish I had more mental fortitude Like, I wish I was like enjoying putting in the work instead of like hating it. Like, I wish I was smarter. Okay. And then once you start wishing you were better, you can start taking action to actually be better. I can listen to more books. I can have a better schedule. I can eat my food on time every day. I can get to bed on time every day. I can actually make myself better. I can't make it easier, but I can make myself better. So you put yourself back in control of the situation.
Yeah.
So that's how I overcame those times of feeling down, as I thought, instead of wishing I didn't have $180,000 of debt, I was like, I'm going to figure out how to pay this shit off. I'm going to figure out how to make myself better, make my business better. And I think, it is something I didn't cover much. I won't make this a long answer, but, during the course of running businesses and failing, I actually totally let my health go. Like, I didn't get to the gym. Like, I looked like shit, felt like shit, slept like shit, performed at work like shit, was stressed all the time. And I realized at a certain point that if you don't take care of yourself, your number one asset, you don't take care of your brain, your health, your body, you can't go and perform at work at a high level. Yeah. And so you have to take care of your health, and you have to treat yourself as your number one asset when you're running a business. And, when you do that, you're constantly looking to improve yourself, your schedule, your education, your, knowledge level, your strength, your health. That's going to bleed into your success in business and everything else. Because do you want to do business with somebody that looks like they're about to have a heart attack because they haven't slept and they've got bags under their eyes?
Yes.
Or do you want a business with somebody who's sharp and awake and healthy and dialed? Exactly.
Yeah, it's almost like that is that grind, like that mindset of like just being the grind mentality was maybe something that you fell into at that time period of just like
100%.
Because I have those voices too. That's like, yo, maybe you should just stop going to the gym because then you'll have an extra hour and a half to work, And it's like those are so tempting, but it's like coming from that mindset of like just throwing yourself 100% into that one thing, and it's like so short term, it's like you want to do these like sprints or something, but it's like maybe sometimes you have to do that, but not for like you want to be very cautious of how long you're getting stuck in those grind like all-nighter type things because it's not sustainable. But yeah,
one word that's like to kind of wrap this up, I guess, because also we're going to come on your podcast and have another conversation in the future. So everyone who's listening to this, like, definitely we're going to be tagging all of Luke's social media and stuff. And then once you start rolling out more content, there's going to be more coming from us. But, like, one word that's really just sticking out is, like, make it. You have to, or make yourself. And, like, when I think of the word make, I think of, like, you're not expecting something to be given to you. If something's given to you, you didn't make it, Like, Truman could gift me an action figure, or I could, like, take that aluminum can and force it and make it into an action figure. And, like, that perspective on your life of, like, you're gonna make yourself better is, like, saying that you're gonna go and do the work yourself without it being given to you. And I feel like there's something there to, like, you have to make it if you want to make it. Like, if you want to make it, you have to make it.
Brick by brick.
And what's so awesome about that is it ties into everything else we talked about. And I like to think about the idea of, if you were given something, if you did wish it were easier and it got easier, if you, won the lottery, it would actually rob you of all the joy and satisfaction of the achievement and the milestones and the hard work. And, that's why I think you look at people who, like, win the lottery and they, like, ruin their lives or they're unhappy. Mm-hmm. Or, I look at some of the most unhappy people on earth as, like, the trust fund kids, the kids who were born with, like, tons of money and they never find their own way. They just, like, use their, like, family's wealth and they never achieve much themselves. And they're addicted to drugs and they hate their life. And, that happens all the time.
Yeah.
And, like, I had a buddy the other day that was like playing the lottery, and he's like, dude, well, like, you know, like I'm so stoked. Like if I won, like what would you do if you won the lottery? I was like, I'd give it all away. He's like, no, you wouldn't. Nobody does. I'm like, no, first of all, I wouldn't play the lottery, but if I won, I would give it all away.
Yeah.
Because if I win the lottery and I keep it, I've just ruined my whole set of achievement because someone just gave it to me, and now I'm like, what is there to go work
It's like
for
when
now?
you do the unlimited money cheat code in GTA.
That's literally what I was going to say.
And then it's not fun anymore.
It's not fun. It's a peak experience for 20 minutes. You're like, the helicopter, the Lamborghini. And then, like, once you realize you can spawn those at any moment, it's like...
You didn't earn any of it.
Yeah, you didn't earn it, and it's boring.
Yeah.
So I think that's a really good place to...
I think it's a great
wrap
place
up.
to wrap
Yeah,
up.
Luke, this was super fire. Really appreciate you like coming through and dropping knowledge bombs on our audience, and like y'all just get a taste of what it's like to be boys with Luke. So super hyped to get this episode, and got a bunch of content coming on your page that Truman and I were like part of producing. And so if you guys like are into investing, making money, personal development, like that's what your page is all about. Something that's also cool is just like you're not like selling courses or selling to your audience. You're just straight up like, let me just help someone who's going through the same journey that you're going on and sharing what you know. So that's insanely fire to get for free. So if you're someone that's like on your shit and you're trying to be better, 100% go check out Luke's page. And any last thoughts, boys?
Just thanks for having me. And yeah, if there's anyone that's listening that, you know, owns a business and has questions, DM me now while I'm not busy so that I can actually give you attention. You know, and let's be friends. Follow me on TikTok, Instagram, and I'll give you guys a follow back and try to help wherever I can. I'd love content ideas too. If you have like specific business or investment, topics you want to hear me talk about, then drop it in the comments.
Let's go.
All right, guys. Catch y'all on the flip.
Catch you on the flip.
All right, thanks for tuning in to Conversations with Humans.
Nice.